Hi, Wayne Dorban, DrEcolonomics from our Northern Colorado headquarters office in our studio that's still under a status of modification, and we'll have things set up better. Actually, posed this question a little bit earlier to our audience, which is if anyone knows how you switch between your webcam, which is what I'm using right now, and another camera. I have a Logitech camera that is attached, but I'm not sure how to use it. Also, how to use my secondary microphone rather than the microphone right from the computer. I don't see that there's any places to be clicking to make those kinds of changes here. So what I wanted to talk about today was an amazing story, and I wanted to tell it before I forget it, that's happened with a friend of mine. I'm going to start doing a blog sometime in the near future for baby boomers, those gray-haired folks like myself that have gone through some tough times pretty late in their lives, in their business lives. With the recession that hit between 2008 and 2012, there were a lot of people in my peer group who really struggled and that had some huge financial setbacks. I was one of them. I had some financial things that went wrong that caused me some real difficulty. I will share some of those stories at another time. I have another friend that has had some very similar things happen. And so I'm going to give the story here in just a brief way. About 8 or 9 months ago, this friend told me that a business that he'd been involved with for probably the last 6 or 7 years, which was his son's business. So his son had started a business 6 or 7 years ago that was actually a follow-up on a business that my friend had had for most of his adult life. So he had been a veteran in this particular industry. He had actually sold his business in that industry about 20 years ago, and had done a whole bunch of other things in business. He was very successful in business. And about 6 or 7 years ago, his son decided to get into the same industry that his father had had a lot of success with earlier. So he started this business in that industry, had some success, but then when the recession hit in 2008, he started to struggle. Well, he didn't tell his father this, but he was actually struggling so much that he was not able to pay his taxes. And one message there is that, gosh, you just should never let that happen. And when I talk about taxes, I mean employee taxes, Social Security, and all the other taxes that you need to be paying when you're having employees. He wasn't paying those. The IRS ultimately caught up with him and threatened to shut down his business if he didn't pay the taxes. So he went to his dad, who was there, obviously, and a friend and available, and said, "Dad, can you help me?" And so my friend got involved with his son's business, and he actually loaned him the money to be able to pay for the taxes. Well, unfortunately, the son didn't pay the taxes. Instead, he used the money for other purposes. And about a year ago, it became really evident that this business was going to have trouble succeeding. And so my friend was, over the last year, dealing with what are we going to do to shut down this business where I have debt, I've basically guaranteed loans, and the business is struggling in a big way. So we've been talking about that for some time. About a little over 2 weeks ago, my friend called me and said, "Gosh, I found another negative thing happen. My wife went in for a physical on Friday because she was getting ready to have some back surgery, and she found out that she's got breast cancer. And they've scheduled surgery for 2 weeks, which would have been last Friday. And looks like they've caught it pretty early, but still pretty shocking revelation. So he's dealing with a business that's failing. They've already figured out that they're going to have to sell it, which they were contemplating doing in sometime in the near future. And then, frankly, he would ultimately, sometime in the next year, have to file bankruptcy. So my friend was facing losing a business, filing bankruptcy, losing his house, potentially, that he's lived in for some time, beautiful place, has had business success his whole life, has had multiple businesses that have made millions of dollars, lives in a beautiful location, a place that he and his wife have had for years. So he's facing losing his business, going bankrupt, losing his house, and now his wife's diagnosed with cancer. So this was all about 2.5 weeks ago. We started talking about it through that time. About 1.5 weeks ago, he told me that his wife was just not feeling right about the cancer. She had the diagnosis, but she wasn't convinced that she really had it. Instead, it didn't feel right. And she has a really good oncologist, and yet she just didn't trust the diagnosis. So a week ago, last Friday, so about 10 days ago, the doctor said, okay, we'll do some more tests. So they did additional tests on that Friday, and a lot more extensive biopsies. So now I'm going to take you back a little bit further. Last July, this same friend who is contemplating in the future potentially losing his business, potentially being in a bankrupt situation, he went on a men's retreat with a group of friends outside of the city that he lives in. They were traveling. So there were like 4 of them that got in their cars, drove 3.5 hours away to a small city in which they were having this men's conference. The conference was incredible. And they left the conference, and as they were driving back home, they're saying, this was so amazing. We should do one in our own hometown. And they live in a fairly large city. So when they were driving home, they all said, let's do this. Let's figure out how to do a men's conference. And my friend, who's an aggressive business guy, said, all right, I'll lead it. I'll figure it out. We'll get it done. So this was in July, actually the middle of July. And he didn't know what to do. He'd never done a large conference ever in his life before that. But he said he'd take it on. So he got back home. He started calling potential speakers, and he couldn't get anybody that was interested. Nobody that would speak or would be with them at their conference as a speaker and a presenter. He made a lot of phone calls. His top choice was a fellow named Dr. Richards. Dr. Richards wrote a book back about 20 years ago called Be a Man. It's a bestseller. And that was the guy that he really wanted. So finally he reached that fellow, Dr. Richards, and got through his gatekeeper, his secretary, and his assistants. And he was finally able to talk to Dr. Richards. It was late in July. And he asked Dr. Richards if he would be willing to come and speak at the men's conference that my friend was going to lead in Idaho. And my friend had already picked a date, January 30th, 2016, and was planning for that day. Well, Dr. Richards said, I get about 500 requests to do speaking every year. I only accept 10 of them. And the chances that I would accept this are fairly low, but I'll consider it. I'll certainly think about it. And your timing's excellent. I only contemplate any speaking engagements during the month of July. This was the 3rd weekend in July. If you would have called me in August, you would have had to wait another whole year. So he told my friend that he would consider it. Don't expect really good results because there were 500 other requests that he'd had, but that he'd get back to him sometime early in August and tell him whether he was willing to do it or not. So we get into early August, and sure enough, this fellow, Dr. Richards, called back and said, I'll do it. I'll be your keynote speaker. So all of a sudden, my friend now has his keynote speaker. Now it's serious. Now he has to get somebody else. He's got to get a number of other speakers for a 1-day-long conference. He can't get one. He just keeps failing. And he literally, up until last week, had nobody else scheduled to be a speaker. So now, I gave that backstory. Now let's go up into last week, Monday of last week. On Monday of last week, he got a call from the doctor's office saying that the results of the tests would be on Tuesday or Wednesday for his wife, and that they should plan to come in. So they scheduled an appointment on Wednesday. And he got a call back from one of the people that he had been calling about being a speaker. And this fellow was named Guy Gruters. And if you look up Guy Gruters, he is an ex-pilot in the Iraq conflict. He's a decorated veteran and is a speaker at men's conferences all over the world. And Guy Gruters said, I'll do it on Monday. On Tuesday, he gets a call from another fellow named Jesse Romero. Jesse Romero is an ex-vice cop in Los Angeles. Before that, he's a member of a really horrible gang. And he's also a highly decorated person that now speaks at conferences and events all over the world. And he agrees to do it. So now he's got his speakers in place. Now, one other story. On Saturday, after his wife had been diagnosed with cancer on Friday, a week prior on Friday, he gets a call from a friend of his that he elk hunts with, and he only sees maybe once a year for the last 20 years. And this fella calls and says, I know that you realize that I've been dating a lady. Well, I've just gotten married. And I'd like you and your wife to come over and visit with us on Saturday night. And my friend says, sure, that'd be great. Love to meet her. We've heard about her. Where should we meet? So he said, gave him an address. And my friend said, wait a minute, that's your horse ranch. There are no buildings there. There's just a pasture. And the friend said, come, that's where I want you to meet. So on the Saturday night, essentially a little over a week ago, he goes to his friend's house or his friend's property, no house there. And as he's driving up the road, he sees some lights where he didn't remember ever seeing lights before. Now, he hadn't been here to that spot for a year or so. And there were lights. As they get closer, they realize there's a building on this property. It's a big building. It's a barn. It's a big horse barn. And friends there, and with his new wife, they end up meeting. He shows them around in the barn, and then they go up some stairs, and upstairs is this beautiful home, 2,500 square feet that's put on this floor. And after they have dinner, the friend says, Russ, one of the reasons I wanted to meet you here, my friend's name is Russ, by the way, is that I want to have you live here, you and your wife. And my friend says, how did you know that we're potentially going to lose our house? Well, I didn't, but I'd like you to live here. And he said, well, I can't afford this place, my friend said. And he said, don't worry about affording it. I want to pay you to be here. I want you to take care of my horses. I want you to bring your horses here. So all of a sudden, now my friend has a place to stay if he loses his house. So he puts his house that was Saturday night. On Monday, remember the same day that he gets a new speaker for his conference, his men's conference, he gets another phone call from a realtor who says, you told me you wanted to list your house. I've got a buyer. So they formally list the house on Monday. And on Wednesday, he gets a cash offer for his house. And it's for more than he had asked for it. And he has to be out by December 15th. Well, what I didn't say is that the friend who wants him to move into his house and be caretaker and pay him for it, he wants him to move in by December 15th. So all of a sudden now he's got a place to move into, and even though he's going to be losing his own house. So we get to Wednesday, and he gets results back from the doctor. There is no cancer. None. No evidence at all. And so they asked, well, what happened before? I said, I don't know. It must be a miracle. Something happened. Marie, his wife is Marie, you have no cancer at all. Talk about exciting to my friend and his wife. There's no evidence of cancer. That was on Wednesday. I spoke with him on Thursday of last week, and I wanted to get this out there before I forget it or tell the story all wrong. So remember, he now has this men's conference that he's got 3 speakers for, but he doesn't have any money to promote it, none. And he doesn't have a venue to even hold it at. On Tuesday, he's working out at the gym, place he goes to all the time, and he sees a woman across the way in the gym that he thinks he recognizes. Now, this is a guy who's very friendly. He easily meets other people. And he walks across and says hi to her and asks if he, is right, that he remembers her for somewhere. And she said, I think so. I think I remember you. And they start to compare notes, and they realize that they do know each other. And they start to talk, and she says, I don't know if you know it, but I lost my husband not too long ago. And he said, no, I didn't know that. And her husband and she own a really prominent business in the city that my friend and she live in. And she said, yeah, my son's now going to take over the business, but I'm worried about it because he's not my husband. And my friend says, well, I'm going to have a men's retreat coming up, a conference where maybe your son can come to it and it could be really helpful. And she said, oh, that'd be wonderful. When is it? January 30th. And here are the speakers, Dr. Richards and Mr. Gruters and Jesse Romero. And she gets all excited. She says, oh, that's so nice. I'm going to tell my son about it. And Russ goes, yeah, except I have one problem. I really don't have the money to even have it work yet. She said, really? What do you need? And he didn't even know. He said, well, I think we need $20,000. She wrote him a check for $20,000. So now, in less than a week, he'd gone from having to declare bankruptcy, which he's still going to have to do, losing a business, which actually had happened, but that was passed. His wife being diagnosed with cancer. Now she's cancer-free. Not having any place to live, having a friend offer a place to him, having a men's conference that he only had one speaker when he started the week, and now he's got all his speakers. He didn't have any money. Now he's got $20,000. And now all he needs to complete this whole picture is a place to have it. So in this city, there's a large college, and they're building a new event center. And it's been advertised in the newspapers and on all the media that it's going to open around Christmas time. So there'll be some events at the Christmas tree. So he just decides he's going to get a hold of them and talk about this event that he's having in January and just see if there's any way he could afford the location, because now he's got some money from this lady. So he gets a hold of them and tells them the story. And they say, we're not sure there's been a conference like this that's even occurred in this area ever, or at least in a long time. Yeah, you can have our center. Seats 1,000 people in one of the rooms. We'll donate it to you for free. We'll cater it for 2 meals during the day. That's going to be our gift for your conference. So you talk about a heartwarming story. Somebody going from the pits, so the worst things that could happen, all of a sudden up to where you couldn't imagine all the positive. Now, I didn't tell you one part of the story. My friend has got an amazingly positive attitude about things in life. He's always had that. And through this whole negative that was going on, and we communicate a lot, he'd been up. He'd be a little down at times, but for the most part, it was, you know what? Things are going to work out. Things will be fine. We're both spiritual guys, and he'd talk about, God's going to take care of me. And I'd say, Russ, I think you're right. That'll happen. Well, look what happened. What an amazing story. It did work out. The conference is happening. It's fully funded. It's going to be amazing. His wife doesn't have cancer. He's got an amazing place to move into when he's now selling his house. Look at all the positive. So when you get down, if you think that there are things that aren't working for you, realize that things are going to get better. Have a positive attitude. There's always somebody in life that's not doing as well as you are. So I wanted you to tell this story because this is truly what we care about with the whole principle of DrEcolonomics, making lives better, making the planet better in a synergistic way. DrEcolonomics. We're going to start doing some coaching and teaching on this topic, particularly with baby boomers, with those who are in that end of their business lives, but are still productive. They still want to do something. They want to either give back. They want a legacy. They want to make some money. They're in difficult financial circumstances. We have got a message for you. We'd like to connect with you. So somewhere here on the page, there's probably a place that you can put your name and we can get you more information. You can schedule a meeting with us. We'd love to talk to you about what we're doing. be watching for a blab that we're going to start doing on a regular basis. That it's going to be just reaching out. We'll be interviewing people across the world that have gone through similar things that, like my friend. And I'm going to try to get my friend to come on. I noticed I was somewhat anonymous in talking about it. And I'm hoping I can get him to come on and give the story directly, so it won't be secondhand coming from me. But anyway, I think it's a good time to end for the day. Thank you so much for listening, and you have a great day. And we're going to be doing lots of these kinds of blabs moving ahead, as well as others that we do. We do our Economics in Action the first and third Wednesdays of every month. We're starting to do another one with alternative health concepts that we're actually doing still later today. So everybody have a great day. We'll chat with you later, and happy blabbing.